We are live. So I'm just going to put my notes over my face just so I'm not looking at myself the whole time and give you guys a little bit of an introduction. So this is session 6 of the recruitment training that I've been doing over the last kind of month and a half. We've got one session left after today. This gives you a strong foundation to all of the challenges that you're going through with hiring. I've been in recruitment for 22 years. I've had my own recruitment consultancy for the last 8 of those years. And the common theme that I hear businesses speaking about is recruitment is challenging. And I can literally go onto someone's information on LinkedIn, the careers page. I can tell them within 5 minutes why they struggle to hire. There's no investment in terms of recruitment. It's treated as a very reactive situation. Shit, we need someone, hiring manager, ring a recruitment agency, lean on the internal talent team. There's no presence on the careers page. And even if there is, there's nothing to tell me about who that business is. There's no kind of attraction strategy. So I listened and I've created completely free, valuable half-an-hour trainings over the last few weeks. If you want access to them, it's on my LinkedIn profile page under the event section. As soon as these lives finish, they go straight up to the recording, goes straight onto my page. So we've got one more session next week and today. So I'm going to set the tone in terms of what today's training actually is. So with the last few training sessions that we did, we really set the tone in terms of how to create a really strong message about who your business is, company culture, core values, the vision for your business. If you have any plans for recruitment over the course of 2025, you need to start having conversations with people now, even for a role in 12 months' time. Creating talent pools of people and creating this really strong message as to who you are as an employer takes time. And I really encourage businesses to start moving away from reactive recruitment. That's why your recruitment process falls down. That's why people fall out of your recruitment process, because there's nothing tangible for them to hold on to. So within week 1, we talked about creating this really strong message as to who you are as a business. And I speak to some businesses who are like, oh, well, we did that a couple of years ago. How much has the world changed over the last couple of years? Creating a really strong message in terms of core values, company culture, and the vision for your organization needs to be done every 12 months to make sure that you are putting out the most up-to-date message about your business as possible. We had a look at job descriptions and how to use AI to be able to create those job descriptions, but also we want them to be able to detract the people that you don't want in your business, and we want them to attract the people that you do. Recruitment isn't just sticking an advert out on Indeed and seeing what happens. It's a very strategic process. And once we get all of the right building blocks in place, it starts to become less challenging. You start to get results out of it. You know, when I first started off in recruitment when I was 19, we used to just literally go through the page, a page in the yellow pages, cold call people. We'd advertise stuff in the newspaper. Things were a lot different back then, and recruitment has changed a lot. Because of COVID, now it's a very candidate-driven market. So we have to make sure that your information is as accessible online as possible. And the job descriptions that you're creating are speaking to the right demographic of the people that you want to attract. Then we had a look at advertising strategies. So we want to kind of get curious in terms of where your ideal candidate is hanging out. Start to measure the results that come through within your interviewing process so that you can get a gauge on which candidates are coming through, the quality, the quantity, and where you can start having a look at your recruitment budget and what you're spending that on too. After that, we had a look at employer branding. Sure, I've missed one out here, but hey-ho. We had a look at employer branding. And what is employer branding? I tend to find that a lot of businesses will jump on the bandwagon maybe like 2 to 5 years after something has something new's come out. And employer branding wasn't that hot of a topic a couple of years ago. But again, with the expansion of technology and the evolution of all these different platforms, employer branding now has never been so important. If we get all of these building blocks right at the very beginning, we don't have to revisit this again for another 12 months. You know, and I've really broken it down over the last few weeks as to really actionable steps that you can start to make that aren't hard. I've given you a roadmap in terms of how to do that. So I encourage you to have a look at the videos from the previous weeks as they all layer up on one another. Now, this week I'm going to be talking about the training that all hiring managers need when it comes to hiring. And why this is so important is hiring managers have a job to do. And it's not recruitment. They manage teams. They grow the department. They're responsible for a lot of other things. Whereas what hiring managers then get given the task of is recruitment. And a lot of them don't know what they're doing, have never been given any form of training, and they fly by the seat of the pants when it comes to interviewing, and it's not their fault. You know, it just kind of gets lumbered in with their role. Whereas the work that I've done with businesses over the last 12 months have really given hiring managers a foundation and an understanding in terms of how impactful their actions are when it comes to interviewing, how to set a safe space for someone, what questions to ask, how to navigate difficult conversations, how to deal with introverts and extroverts. We've got this really cookie cutter approach to interviewing that we're human beings. We have to treat everyone individually, and by kind of removing the traditional methods of how interviewing is being done, you're going to get better results when it comes to having a conversation with someone. I can sit in a room of people. I'm not the most interesting person. I'm the most interested. So I'm having a different kind of experience than everybody else because I'm listening. I'm looking at body language. I can see an extrovert from an introvert. I know who's kind of Billy bullshit, and I know who's been authentic because I'm taking that time to really understand the behavior of other people. Now, I'm not saying that you have to understand human psychology, not at all. But what I am saying is that there's a different way of doing interviewing where you'll get more impactful results. So when it comes to a couple of different scenarios, you might have someone that's just been made redundant and they've never been made redundant before, so it's had a knock on their confidence. It will have an impact in how they are interviewing for your organization. You might have someone that is a really confident salesperson. They might be talking all over the questions that you're answering, and now you're like 15 minutes in and you're still on question one and you're like, holy shit, how do I navigate this interview? You might have someone that's really introverted, so they might be doing some form of a role where they don't have to speak to other people, and you're asking questions that they can't give you answers to. But we've not set this container up in a way that someone feels safe, someone feels comfortable. We might have just gone straight in there, balls deep, with some really aggressive questions, and then that person feels backed into a corner. They don't feel confident in terms of answering the questions that you're asking, but also as well, the questions that you're asking aligned. I can still very clearly remember every single competency question that I used to ask when I worked at Empower for 5 years because I said them every single day. And I could predict the answers that someone would give me. And I could really get through an interview quite quickly. I wasn't really present, and I was just literally going through this churn of asking people the same questions and getting the same answers. For me, an interview is a two-way conversation. It's about me finding out more about that person. Can I see myself working with them every day? Can I see them fitting into the mold of the organization? Can I see them working with certain individuals within my team? Those are the things that I'm addressing and analyzing. And what I find a lot of businesses do is that they'll spend 10, 15 minutes talking about the business and who they are and what it's like to work here. That shouldn't really have to be asked or spoken about, because that should be all over social media, should be all over your careers page. It should be sent out to the candidate as part of their interview process, so that this reinforced message as to who you are as a business is sent out and it's accessible everywhere, so that that person reading this information can also make an informed decision in terms of who you are as a business and whether that's right for them. What we really want to do is make the most of the time that you've got with a candidate, so that the conversation is about the progression of the role, is about understanding their skills and experience, is about understanding the team and who they're going to be working with and what the development looks like. What can they get out of the role? What can you get out of them? And I'll go through a couple of exercises within this training in the time that we've got, so you can start to really have a think about your current interview process versus how this could look in 2025. We've got 5 to 6 weeks left now where you could really start making an impact on recruitment over the next few months. So when it comes to, I'm just going to have a look at my notes in here. Let's have a little look in terms of how this could look from a couple of exercises in terms of you making sure that someone is set up for success, but you've also got the right interview questions. And we can have a look at how we can make your interview process a little bit more interactive too. So it's not just you sat there with some paper and asking questions and then making a decision based on that situation. I want this to be more in depth, and I want you to be able to understand how to get the best out of someone too. So I think it was maybe training 2 or 3 that I've done. Check it out on my LinkedIn profile. But we were talking about how to create job descriptions with AI and why that is so important to get that right, because it relates to the interview questions that you're going to be asking. So if you are still using interview questions from 5 to 6 years ago, job descriptions from 5 to 6 years ago, that's one thing that I strongly encourage you to have a look at first and foremost. Is that job description a reflection of the role? And what I encourage you to do is give the task of that job description to someone that works in the team. So give them an exercise for them to record every single thing that they do in that role, so that by the end of a 5-day period, you can chuck it through ChatGPT, you can chuck it through AI, ask it to then create a job description, take out the fluff, but to create an impactful and inspiring job description based on the brain dump that you're going to put into there. Don't use this to advertise. This is purely for this exercise. If you want to kind of go more in depth in that, I think it's session 2 or 3 that I did over the last few weeks. Now, with that job description, then what we're going to do is put it back through ChatGPT and ask it to create interview questions based on this job description. So, hey ChatGPT, I always speak to ChatGPT like a friend. Hey ChatGPT, can you help me create some interview questions? I'd probably say anywhere between 10 to 15 interview questions that will help me identify the skills and experience of this person. I don't want any yes or no questions. I want to be able to encourage the candidate to answer these questions in depth. So it will create some really impactful questions for you. Have a look at the questions, take out what resonates, leaves what does, maybe tweak them. And then what you could also do as well is, if you have got some strong statements on your company culture and your core values and the vision for your business, you can ask it to incorporate those statements into the question. So you could really have a look at, are we asking questions around the skills and experience based on that job description? So another prompt, hey ChatGPT, I'd like to create some questions around skills and experience from this job description. Hey ChatGPT, here's our company culture. Here's a vision for our organization. Here are our core values. I'd like to create 10 questions around this information that the candidate can answer, so I can see whether they're suited to our team, our company culture. So again, you've got a couple of variations in terms of these questions, so it's all aligned. And then what you could do in terms of asking more questions, you can ask for the STAR method. So situation, task, action, and result. So what this encourages the candidate to do is to answer the question in a layered approach, but you can ask ChatGPT to make it interactive, to make it easy to answer, to add more impact, to make it more difficult based on the level of candidate that you're going to be interviewing. You know, if it's for a sales role or an administration role, entry-level roles, we don't want to be going too deep into technical questions, but we want to be able to see their passion. We want to be able to see their interest in the role. So again, we can use AI to ask inspirational questions or questions that are related to the role, where they can provide me an example. Also, as well, what we can do with this is ask AI to present these questions in the way that an extrovert would really appreciate the questions, or an introvert. So we're managing the expectations of diversity to make sure that these questions are aimed at certain individuals based on the people that you've got coming through your process. You know, these questions I would always encourage you to have similar questions, but set up in a different way. So introvert, extrovert, shorter questions, longer questions, more in-depth questions. Ask ChatGPT to create questions that they have to provide detailed examples to, so that you are making the most out of these questions. And all of this relates back to the job description. All of this relates back to your business. So we're not just sitting there thinking, what questions am I going to ask? It all relates back to your business and the job at hand. Now, in terms of you setting up a container, so this is a safe space for you and a candidate. What I would strongly encourage you to do is always give the candidate guidance, boundaries, and not rules and regulations as such, but give them instructions. For example, if you have someone that can be a bit of a chatty Cathy, you want to set the intention that we have X amount of time together, 35 minutes, 40 minutes. I'm going to give you some information at the beginning. I've got a set of questions that I'm going to go through with you. And bear in mind, I'm going to give a couple of minutes allowance for each question just so that we keep the momentum going. Then I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So you're really setting the tone in terms of, this is the interview, this is what is expected, and you're setting boundaries. We all have been in a situation where candidates have talked at us. And what really works well in those situations is candidates being given boundaries and candidates being given instructions. You're fully in control of this if you set the container up in a way that is what's the word I'm looking for? Is structured, and I think sometimes we assume that people know what we're thinking, but it's never going to be like that. You have to be really clear in terms of, this is the interview, these are the guidelines, this is the flow of how this is going to work. Now, we've also got the other end of the spectrum where someone might come to this interview and be very nervous. We might have a situation where someone physically can't answer a question. They've let the nerves and the stress and the control consume them a little bit too much. And this can be a little bit awkward if you don't know what you're doing. So what I would kind of say within that respect is, if you feel that the question might be a little bit too hard or you're struggling with the information, then we'll revisit this at the end. And once we get to that point where the candidate's not really giving us what we need, we'll give them a couple of opportunities, but at some point we have to terminate the interview. And for me, I don't want to put anyone through unnecessary stress if they're already going through that stress. But also as well, you're interviewing for a role. So you've given them a great opportunity. They've been very brave and courageous to actually turn up and tell them that, I really respect you for showing up for this interview today, but I really do need someone that's going to be able to answer my questions. And for the purpose of this interview, let's just call it a day. If you want to come back, I'd love to see you again. But I really do feel like we might have to just terminate the interview here, and just give them encouragement, give them support, give them an opportunity to ask questions, and maybe put the questions to one side. Try have a conversation with that person. But sometimes we do have to draw a line in the sand in terms of people not being able to ask questions. Now, another great thing to have a think about with this is, as much as hiring managers are responsible for interviewing, get your team involved. This person is going to be working with people within your team. And if you do have someone that has been looking for a bit of a challenge or some more tasks within their day-to-day role, getting them involved in this interviewing process is a great way of you being able to delegate, but also having somebody else that's involved in that interview process. The worst thing that we can do is ask someone to come back for 3 to 4 to 5 different parts of a process. It really should be an application process where that person sends in their information. Then we do a screening call over Teams. It's recorded so everybody has access to it. And then we get them in for a final interview. Shouldn't really be any more processes after that. You should be able to make an informed decision based on that process. But what's a great kind of addition to that is having your significant other in the team to be a part of that interviewing process so that they can gain more skills, they can gain more experience. But again, it's you not having to maybe dip in and out of interviews all the time. So maybe have them as part of your interview process, interviewing with you for maybe 3 to 5 different interviews so that they build that confidence. And then you can start to delegate that second part of the interview process to said person in the team so that you can really start to navigate what your role is as a hiring manager and delegate the things that we don't necessarily have to be involved in. And again, it's another great way of them being able to record that conversation so that if you do want to review that interview, then you can watch it over Teams. You don't have to be dipping in and out of interviews all the time. So in terms of, let me just have a look at my notes. I think I've gone through quite a bit of information. And if you do have any questions, just pop them in the chat and I can answer them as I go. So another thing that I kind of want to talk to you about in terms of interviewing is I've created some training that does have mindfulness techniques in there. And what I'm encouraging people to do that are interviewing is to not just kind of finish one task and then jump straight into an interview, because our head's still in the task from the previous things that we've been just doing. And it's scientifically proven now that it can take up to 23 minutes for us to gain focus again from doing one task to another. So imagine if you write an email and someone sends you a message, you pick it up, you put your phone back down, you're like, oh, what was I writing? It takes a while for you to come back into the room. The same goes for an interview. So within the training that I've got, I've created some mindfulness exercises. It's a couple of minutes meditation and it's a couple of minutes breath work. But this enables you to then, like 10, 15 minutes before the interview is due to stop, take a minute, do the mindfulness exercise, really come present into your body, go through someone's information, maybe have a quick look at the LinkedIn profile. And then when you're ready to hit go on the Teams interview, you are fully present. You know, you're not thinking about the thing that you were just doing 2 minutes ago. You're not thinking about a conversation that you had an hour ago. You're fully present with a candidate. And that will make a ton of difference in terms of the conversation that you have with them. Sometimes we miss stuff. When we've been so busy throughout the day, there might be a green flag or a red flag that you've missed with someone that you didn't see before because you were still thinking about all the stuff that you've been doing throughout your busy schedule. So when we do become fully present, we hear things differently, we see things differently, and it makes more of an impact in terms of the conversation that we're going to have too. One other thing that I just want to kind of say before I wrap this training up is an interview doesn't just have to be a conversation that you have with someone. One of the things that I always used to do when I was working internally in recruitment was I would walk the candidate around the office first. So I'd show them all the different departments. I'd introduce them to a couple of people, maybe in that team, just so that they could get a sense of the organization. And again, you can do that as a hiring manager. You can have it as the first part of the process. You can have it as the last part of the process, just so they can have a bit of a whistle-stop tour in terms of who that organization is. Also, what I've done with some other businesses is I've encouraged them to kind of drop the candidate off with some people in the breakout room or the kitchen area, just so that they can grab a drink. And then a couple of the people in the team are having a conversation with them. So it's more eyes and ears on the candidate. So you can make better decisions when it comes to that person working in the team. So let me just have a look at my notes. Perfect. So I hope that's made sense. I hope that's given you a bit more clarity in terms of interviewing and how that can start to look within your organization. You know, when we kind of think about interviewing, we look at this as this really nervous, horrible situation that a candidate has to go through. And it's really not. It's about you getting to know someone. It's about you understanding who that person is on a deeper level. And it's about you making better decisions when it comes to hiring, because now you've got more of an in-depth understanding of how an interview actually works. So next week's session, we're going to be having a look at induction and retention. Because what I really want to encourage businesses to start doing is not just recruiting when we need someone, not just hiring externally when a role comes available. What steps are we putting in place to make sure that we're retaining staff, to make sure that we're developing people within the organization? Typically, we can only hold on to someone for a couple of years because they'll hit the glass ceiling in the business, and then they'll start looking somewhere else because they're not being challenged enough. Whereas what opportunities now are we giving to people to be able to develop them, so that the only time that we have to go to market for a new role is if that talent isn't actually in your business. So that's what we're going to be covering next week. I'm just in the thick of finishing Hiring Made Easy. So it was finished, and then I decided to separate all of the modules into 6 mini modules. So everything that we've gone through over the last few weeks, there's more in-depth training in terms of that. The training that I offer is, it's all online, it's evergreen. It's lifetime access, it's unlimited users. And the way that the modules are all set up is very much training like this from myself. And then it's got a mixture of Loom videos, downloadable documents. It's got a really great foundation in terms of how recruitment can look in 2025. So I'll be sharing more about that with you next week. I'm really excited about that. And this training will be up once the StreamYard link finishes. And if you do have any questions, please let me know. But thank you so much for joining today. And I'd love to know if this information has been helpful on your hiring process. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next week.